Right after seeing the first player achieve difficulty 6 without limited 5-star constellations, I knew I had a shot as well. That's how I play my main account after all. However, since I lack some of the options used in those clears, I felt like I needed a different strategy. In this video, I will showcase what that strategy was, how Ember actually helped, and how I unfortunately discovered that the Mavica Tulpa matchup in Dire is some of the most challenging content this game ever gave us. Let's start with that. My team was C0R1 Mavica, Shidonen and Silali with C6 Bennett. The team has Instructor, Tenacity and Noblesse. Before getting some good attempts, I realized that other players getting these runs done have insane builds. And I'm not talking about Mavica here. The amount of energy recharge necessary for some of these rotations to work is very high. It actually got me strongboxing Noblesse and Tenacity in 2025. But after doing that a bunch, my overall game plan was a simple rotation of Mavica into Bennett for particles, Shidonen after Silali because of Instructor, and then Bennett into Mavica. Very easy. The not so easy thing is the Mavica combo, which I completely whiffed on the second rotation by the way. It's a mix of charge attack, normal attack and dash. It starts with a charge attack into a dash and then repeats a combo of normal attack into a charge attack, very quickly cancelled by a dash. This is used because it makes you fit as many charge attacks as possible, and since the combo includes 3 hits, it manages to always reset the internal cooldown over hits, granting a vaporize on basically every charger attack. This is not a combo you should use everywhere. It works here because the Tulpa has a permanent Hydro aura. Now the run is just a matter of repeating this process and making the rotation as quick as possible so that Mavica can burst off cooldown. Except for one small detail. The Tulpa's shield. This thing is the hardest wall to face for anyone attempting this clear. I was stuck on it for days, it's just too tanky. The original run I was inspired from simply dealt with it by having a better Mavica than me, C6 Janssen and one trick I will explain in a bit, but I simply couldn't do it. I didn't even have enough damage and at best I was 1 pixel off a couple of times. But the Tulpa refreshes every cooldown and gives you full energy and fighting spirit when the shield is cast. So what if all our buffs were set up already before the shield, and once it starts, we use 2 Mavica's burst. Basically the same concept around casting 2 Pyronados, but applied to Mavica. Well, that was my solution. A hard to execute one, but doable. The tricky part was being on time for the shield phase, and for the burst to land right as the shield is cast. Because you can't be too late or too early, nor can you wait for the shield animation to know when to press it. You kind of have to predict it, so that the burst cooldown is refreshed during the burst animation. If you land this, you keep going as normal, utilize all your buffs, and then recast 2 necessary ones. Shilonen, which also activates Instructor, and Bennett. Now another burst will be just enough for the shield phase. The boss loses a chunk of HP, and now it's all about praying that A. Tulpa doesn't randomly one-shot you on Bennett's field, B. You don't screw up your combo or rotations too much. I will be honest and say that this run is extremely hard, but it wasn't without mistakes. A better time can be achieved, but it obviously doesn't matter. I just wanted to give my 2 cents on what I did and how it worked for me. I know a lot of people are trying similar runs and I hope this helps. The unedited full run will be on my second channel. Now, going back to a Janssen run, I want to showcase a little trick many are not using on Tulpa, and that's a way for Janssen to buff Pyro with Cinder City. Since the boss has a permanent Hydro aura, she can technically just trigger Electrocharged. However, thanks to Bennett C6 and his Pyro Infusion, it's actually very possible to apply some Electro, then do a Pyro infused normal attack while she is in Nightsoul Blessing. And since Overload is an Electro related reaction, Cinder City activates and we get 40% Pyro damage. I think this is a better approach than what I did, but I felt like I didn't have enough damage. Now, what about the other 2 bosses? Well, honestly, they were much easier. The automaton device for Skirk users is absolutely free. If you have this team and C0R1 Skirk, then I would argue that even Dire is free. I still have something to share though. First off, splitting your rotation to use 2 Shenhe skills is on paper more damage, but in practice I just couldn't coordinate it with the boss mechanics. It was simply better to use Shenhe hold skill and burst and then on-field Skirk. Here I experimented with her dash cancels a lot, always after N5 and even after a charger attack. It turns out you can dash very early in her animations and I didn't frame count anything yet, but it felt much better. But that's about it, it's a very simple clear. The Lava Dragon statue with Day and Ember was an interesting one. Honestly, Kinich and Emily are just a ton of damage, but instead of giving you the general tips that you probably already know, I want to say that all you care about are two things. Getting rid of phase 1 as soon as you possibly can, and consider phase 2 as a time window in which you should already be doing damage. In phase 1, every resistance is 200%, you're basically not doing damage. That's where Ember shines. Her burst applies Pyro 18 times in total. Since it has standard internal cooldown, that means it will also apply 6 units of Pyro. And those account for even more of the Fury bar the boss has. One burst basically gets rid of it. In phase 2, however, many focus on continuing to deal with the Pyro hits, but that's a mistake if your damage is coming from a non-Pyro source. For those, the rest is already down to 45%, which is just 15 with Deepwood. And for Kinich, the most important thing is getting 5 cannons consistently. I made a couple of videos on that. Lastly, I never really farmed Unfinished Reveries, so I decided to go deep with Emily, Tenacity Deya and Noblesse Ember. This is the only boss in dire difficulty where you can kind of get creative. Of course, Bennett, Shanling, Mavuika could have done a good job here as well, but the same also applies to Shiro's teams, especially fled by Varesa. All in all, I might not be among many at saying this, and I swear it's not just because I managed it, but I love this new endgame mode. I was getting to a point where using resources felt pointless since Abyss is never a challenge and I would level up something just because I needed it for a video. However, Dire Stygian, even without very meaningful rewards, was very fun to play and optimize for. And I'm actually looking forward to helping players get at least their stage 5 done. If you have a question, drop it in the comment section. The unedited runs will be on my second channel. Like or sub if you want, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.